All right, so now that it's 9:30, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Education Transformation 2020 presentation, Learning by Doing, Incentive Alignment, and Low Stress Grading. My name is Taylor Ireland. I'm also accompanied by my colleague Laura Shevlin and Allison Klebus, who we're all courseware representatives over here at Hawks Learning, and our speaker today is Dr. Stefani Milovanska-Farrington. Dr. Stefani Milovanska-Farrington teaches microeconomics at the University of Tampa. She obtained her PhD in economics from the University of South Florida in 2018. Her research interests include labor, health, education, and family economics. She has published articles in academic journals, including Economics and Human Biology, Journal of Family and Economic Issues, Education Economics, Research in Economics, and others. In 2020, she published a textbook supplement called Microeconomics, The Science of Choice, designed for principals in microeconomics classes. We'll have a live Q&A session with Dr. Milovanska-Farrington, so please enter any questions into the Q&A as we go, and we'll get to them after the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to all attendees when the video is finished processing and ready for distribution. Now I want to hand it over to our presenter. The floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for the nice introduction. And good morning, everybody. As Taylor said, my name is Stephanie, and I will talk about the teaching approach today, which involves a lot of learning by doing, which provides an incentive for students to prepare regularly, and also it does not impose unnecessary stress on the students. So a little bit of overview of the presentation. First, I'll start talking about where the idea came from. Then I'll talk a little bit about the teaching approach, how the students are graded, and the advantages and disadvantages of this teaching approach. So it all started last March when we moved to online classes, as probably many of you did. And I started to think how I can make the most out of the time that I have with my students during the synchronous Zoom meetings. A lot of students had internet concerns, others had technology issues. Some of my students were in other places around the world, so there were some time zone concerns. And if students miss a part of the lecture, that prevents them from understanding the rest of the material. Usually what we teach in economics, and it's the same in many other subjects, is related to what we'll cover afterwards, so it's not a good idea to miss something. And also missing a part of the lecture kind of prevents the students to understand even the rest of that particular lecture. So it's never good to miss anything. And if students don't understand something, they become less engaged, they are less interested, they don't participate so much in the class. Sometimes practice helps, and it is always the more practice, the better. But we sometimes don't have enough time to do that in the classroom or on Zoom. So I started to think how I can provide more flexibility to my students, how I can provide them with more or better opportunities to understand the material. And most importantly, I wanted to maximize the time that I have for practice, so that just to make sure that all the students understand the material well and the students are more engaged in the classroom. So what I decided to do at that time was the following. I started recording videos in advance of me teaching the material. I was providing those videos to my students. They were responsible for watching those and understanding kind of the material as much as they can. And then when I was meeting with the students, we were just summarizing that material, and we were focusing on practice questions, practice problems. We were having some discussions, we were discussing news articles, some video examples, and so on. And at the end of the semester, I asked my students for some feedback. And surprisingly or not, they said that in that way, they weren't better, they weren't more. They told me that during those practice sessions, they were able to understand the material so much better than anything else we had done before that in the classroom. They understood that they were responsible for watching those videos. Of course, there were concerns that some of the students were not watching, so they were not as engaged. So I had to kind of go over the basics and to summarize a little bit of the material in the classroom again. So this kind of led to some changes that I made afterwards for this semester, but that's where the idea started from. So students said, that's how we learn the best, by practicing that material. So I decided, well, what can I do to come up with some approach that I can use in the semesters, even if we are in person, even if we are on campus. So now for every chapter, I record videos in which I explain the material, I teach the material as if we are in the classroom. I give those videos to the students in advance, and they're responsible to watch those videos, to read the chapters, and then to take a short quiz based on that material before we practice it in class. So they do this every week for one chapter. And then the following week, we practice that material in class. We solve again practice questions, practice problems. We have discussions. We discuss news articles and videos related to the material. And then they have a homework assignment, which is related to that material in the week after. So, for example, in the first week, the students were responsible for reading the first chapter, to watch the videos that I have recorded for them related to first chapter, and they had to take that first quiz, which was based on chapter 1, just to make sure that everybody has read the material and is familiar with it. And then in the second week, we were practicing that material. And they were responsible for preparing chapter number 2. And then in the third week, they had a homework assignment, which was based on chapter 1 that we had already practiced. And they had to already prepare chapter 3, and we were practicing in class chapter number 2. So it's kind of, they have to work on several chapters every week. And you can guess that if we have, let's say 12 chapters, in my case, I have 12 chapters, in your case, it might be some other number. That means 12 quizzes, 12 homework assignments, and some additional exams if you have those, and I do, and some additional assignments if you have those as well. So a lot of people would think, well, this is so much, that's so much work. So maybe it is. And yes, I agree, that's a lot of things that students have to do, but it depends on how you grade them, how stressful it is for the students. If students understand that it's not stressful, and if they understand the benefit from this approach, they don't mind it. So I was thinking how I can achieve that part. And I said, well, those quizzes and homework assignments have to be graded in a way that's not stressful for the students. They will have the exams that will test their knowledge accurately when they have the actual exams. But the quizzes and the homework assignments can be done slightly differently, just to encourage the students to prepare regularly. And I wasn't sure how to do that, of course. And I started thinking, what is the feedback that I have received from students in previous semesters, not only in the spring, but also before that. So in the past, I used to give a homework assignment after every second chapter, after chapter 2, after chapter 4, and so on. And the students have told me that they would prefer to have shorter homework assignments, but even if they are more frequent ones. So I said, okay, that's a great idea. That works perfectly now. So we can have a homework assignment after every chapter instead of after every other chapter. So that solves that concern of students. A lot of students say, oh, it's better if homework assignment is graded just for submission, for completion, not for accuracy, because I used to grade every single word they write, or every single number if it is a problem. I didn't like that idea because, just for the obvious reasons, we have to grade students on what they know, not to just submit something and you get the points. But I decided to modify that suggestion of the students, and I decided this semester to grade the homework kind of for submission. So let me explain this a little bit. So if students provide answers to all questions and or problems or whatever I have provided, and they explain why they think the answer is the way they have chosen, I give them the points. Even if they have mistakes, that's fine. I tell my students, it's okay, we are here to learn. That's fine to make mistakes. And that's really the way to learn and to understand the material better. But I want to see that you have thought about this, that you haven't just written something just to submit something to get the points. So it's kind of for submission, but they also have to explain why they have chosen that answer, why they have decided that the answer of that problem is, let's say, 5 or whatever other number. So that was how I modified that. And regarding the quizzes, one of my colleagues shared concerns that students might not watch those videos, they might not read the chapters in advance, and that creates a problem in the classroom, because if students haven't been exposed to that material in advance, they cannot solve any problems, they cannot discuss anything, so it's much harder. So that's why I decided to have those quizzes, which I also grade very leniently, as I'll talk a little bit more about grading, and you understand that. So actually that's what I'm talking about next. So the quizzes are very, very short. They are multiple choice questions, and they're usually approximately 10 questions per chapter. They are not hard, they test basic knowledge. I give the students 3 tries, and if they get 50% or more, they get full credit. So it's very lenient grading, but it still provides an incentive for students to read the chapters. It doesn't impose any stress on them, because they know I can get 50%, and I have 3 tries, and they are not long. So they usually, I give them 20 minutes per try. Some students do it faster. But it doesn't impose any stress on the students, because they know I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to understand every single word, but I still have to read something, and in order to take those quizzes and to have to earn 50% or them or more. And also, I decided to do those quizzes not proctored for several reasons, because when students know that they're not proctored, they start taking notes. I mean, the more serious students would take notes either way, but even the others would start taking notes, and I see the students coming to class and they have those notes with them. They have the notes because they wanted to use them when they take those quizzes. So it really helps even the students who normally would not do so well. When they come to class, they have been exposed to that material. Even if they haven't read every single word in the chapter, even if they haven't watched, even if they haven't understood everything from the videos, they have been exposed, and they don't seem confused when I talk about things in class. They seem familiar. At least they have heard those concepts. At least they have some idea what we are talking about. And also, because it's kind of lenient grading, I don't give too many points on those quizzes. As I mentioned, in my case, I have 12 chapters, so I have 12 of those quizzes, and they contribute only 10% of their final grade. So if they don't do well on the exams, that those quizzes will not help them much, but they still want the points and still have an incentive to prepare. I tell the students, I'm very strict about deadlines. So you cannot, I don't accept late homework assignments, late quizzes, or late anything. But I know that anything can happen. You might have a problem, you might forget, you might have some issue at home or whatever else. That's why I count only 10 out of 12. So they have some time, they have some room to miss something, to forget something, or to just miss a quiz for whatever reason. And as I mentioned, those quizzes start in the very first week of classes, so that we can start practicing that material in week 2. I specify the dates in a table in the syllabus, but I also like sending reminders to the students so that they don't forget. And one thing that's not mandatory, but I think it's a good idea, something like a tip, I think it's a good idea, the quizzes to be due the same day of the week and the same time, so that students don't get confused. In my case, that's Saturday, 4 p.m. And I always tell the students, I encourage you to do those quizzes, to take them a little earlier during the week, so that you don't have to worry about this during the weekend. And they actually do that. When I check who has taken the quiz in the middle of the week, about half of the class has usually taken it by Wednesday. And then, as I mentioned, the quizzes are very short, multiple choice. Then the homework assignments come after we have practiced the material in class, and that's why the homework assignments are kind of more, they require more involvement, they require more higher level thinking skills, critical thinking skills of the student. They are not multiple choice, they are usually problems, short answer questions, something similar to what we have done in class. They start in week 3 after we have already practiced chapter 1 in the second week of classes. And as I mentioned, students get full credit as long as they provide not just the answer, but also a solution to every single question. So I want them to try to solve every single question and also to explain why they think the answer is the one that they have provided. Again, I don't accept late homework assignments and I explain to students why I do that. First, because I want them to practice regularly, and second, because I explain them that I usually post the homework, the answers of the homework on the learning management system immediately after the deadline, and it's just not fair to accept something after the answers have been made available. And some of them say, well, why don't you just wait and post the answers later? And I say, no, that's not fair to the students who submit things on time, because it's usually best for you to have those answers and solutions as much as you can, as early as possible, and also to compare those answers with yours when you still remember what you have done in the homework. It's just easier for the students who have worked on time. And I kind of understand that reason and accept those fairness reasons, and they understand that it's good for them to have the answers early. Again, as I mentioned, I don't accept late assignments, but anything happens. So I like counting 10 out of 12 homework assignments. In your case, those numbers might be different. And again, because of the lenient grading of the homework assignments, just the way I explained, they contribute only 10% of the final grade in my class. But interestingly, I noticed that students this semester, when I do this, despite the fact that they're kind of for submission providing solutions, students seem to be doing better than usual on the homework assignments. I think it's either because of the more practice that we do in class, that we usually don't have time to do in class, or some other reason, but I see that they actually, even if I was grading for accuracy, they are doing better. At least that's what I noticed for now, and this is the 5th week of classes, so they have already had 3 homework assignments. Again, very similarly to the quizzes, the due dates are specified in a table in the syllabus, but I like sending reminders to the students. And similarly again to the quizzes, I think it's a good idea the homework assignments to be due the same day of the week, the same time, just so that students don't get confused again. In my case, that's Wednesday, 4 p.m. Every week. But again, I encourage the students to work early on the assignments, and most of them do. Also, it's very, very important to make sure the students understand that they have to check their answers and solutions to yours, because they might have some mistakes, but if you see that they have provided some solution, that they have thought about the material, you give them the points, but they have to make sure that just make sure that they know that they have to compare their solutions to yours. So this is related to quizzes and homework assignments, and then the exams are proctored, and they are graded for accuracy. In my case, I give three exams and the final exam. In your case, you might decide to do it differently, but that's the proctored exams are proctored. They are graded again for accuracy. I usually like giving students short answer questions similar to the homework assignments. Or you can do a little bit of multiple choice, a little bit of short answer questions. And one thing that I have noticed is that it's always better to grade them by yourself, not to use any LMS or whatever to be graded automatically, because the LMS sometimes might count an answer as correct or wrong based on whether it's written, for example, if the answer was 1000, whether they write it with a dot or a comma, or without anything, and the LMS sometimes doesn't respond well to that, and you want to make sure that you are not subtracting points when somebody has done well. And then another advantage of grading by yourself is that I encourage the students to provide some explanation why they think the answer is the one it is, very similar to the homework assignments. And sometimes they might get the final answer incorrect, but their explanation might be right. So in that case, they might be eligible for some partial credit, and they always appreciate that, and they always like that. So that's something that I wanted to mention about the exams. And of course, you can provide some other assignments if you want. In my case, I give them a very short project to do. But in your case, that might be something else. I know some of my colleagues have points for participation. I don't like that because I like grading students on their knowledge, not on whether they participate. But usually the students who participate the most, who attend classes, are the ones who do the best in everything. So but it's up to you how you would do that. So what are the advantages of this structure? The first advantage, very important, is that gives a lot of flexibility to the students. The students can watch the videos with the new material at any time, and they can watch and rewatch multiple times. They can watch a part of the lecture that they haven't understood, and they like that flexibility. In class, if they miss something, they just miss it. Even if you provide a recording, if you have Zoom meetings, they have to go and find exactly the time when this was mentioned, and they might have missed the rest of the lecture because they haven't understood something. So this preparation before we practice the things in class and posting those videos for the students to watch at any time really helps, and they share that feedback with me. And the most important part of this is that it provides so much more time for practice. If we teach everything in class, or most of the material in class, we don't have so much time for practice. This semester, I have much more time for practice, for some questions of the students, for some problems, for those higher level thinking activities, critical thinking activities, skills. This structure allows for that experiential education, learning by doing, which is always a good way to learn, and students appreciate it, and they're much more engaged. When they know what we are talking, when they have been exposed to the material in advance, they feel prepared, they feel that they know something and they want to share it with us. Because of those practice problems and discussions, they have kind of even more incentive to be engaged. Apparently they have an incentive to prepare regularly because of all the quizzes. Even if they don't bring so many points, it's still some incentive to prepare regularly. And also the regular homework assignments every week, that's also another incentive to prepare regularly. So it kind of teaches them to not procrastinate. In addition to that, if you grade them in this way or in some similar way that I explained, it doesn't impose stress on the students. And in addition to that, you would think that the exams would impose some stress on them. As compared to previous semesters, I think the students seem more confident about the exams as well. So usually the week before the exam, they would have a lot of questions and they would start getting stressed, and they would share with me. I talk to my students who share those things. They would explain, oh, I have so much material to learn. There's so much, even if it's not that much. In this semester, when I ask them, they say, oh, I feel confident. We have already practiced so much, and I have already been exposed to that material. So I would just go over it, just solve some of the questions once again, and I will feel prepared. So even the proctored exams don't impose so much stress on them when they don't wait for that last minute and they are stressed that, oof, we won't have enough time to prepare, we won't have enough time to review everything. So they feel prepared early, and that avoids that last minute preparation and just looking at a material very quickly. And it also teaches the students to be organized, to be responsible, because there are a lot of things and they don't want to miss those things. So even if I send them reminders, they have to still keep track of what do I have to read this week, what quiz do I have to take, what homework assignment do I have to do. So with so many things that they have to do, they kind of feel that they have to be more responsible, more organized, even if you send reminders. Of course, there are disadvantages. At the beginning, some students think it's a lot of work, although it is not as compared to the traditional approach, because in the traditional approach, we would teach most of the things in class, but then we will not have so much time for practice. So they have to do that practice at home. And I always tell the students, the more practice, the better. Practice makes it perfect. So with this approach, we do that practice in class. So we just do different things in the classroom and at home, but the time that these things take is about the same. So it's not more work. But they have to understand the structure from the very first class. And after I explained the structure to the students in the first class, and I even recorded a short video explaining it for students who had missed that class, and I recorded that first session, they seemed okay with it. They didn't think it was too much or unfair or anything. I wasn't, to be honest with you, I wasn't sure in first class how students would respond to that. So I asked them, what do you think about this? Do you think there is something that you would prefer to be different? Is there any suggestion that you can provide? Is there anything you would like me to think about, whether that's the best way to do it? Do you do something else in other classes that might work better than this and you might prefer it? They shared with me that they think that the structure and the grading was fair, and they were so happy about the grading of the quizzes and the homework that they didn't mind even the proctored exams, which are again graded for accuracy, and they will show who has done the things diligently and seriously and has taken the class seriously. Another disadvantage that you might think of is that you have to prepare the videos in advance. So you kind of have to prepare the videos of you teaching that material. And in addition to that, you have to prepare for the actual classes, the in-person classes where you have to, or Zoom classes, whatever you have, where you have to have questions ready for the students, discussion questions, news articles, or whatever else you would like to do with the students there. But I think it still saves time, because if students ask you questions about some part of the lecture they have missed, you can refer them to the appropriate video and even time in the video. Students actually have fewer questions when you have done more practice in class, because they kind of understand the things better when you have practiced more. So eventually it doesn't feel like more work. Of course, you can send reminders to the students. I do it. It's not mandatory. It's totally up to you, but I think it's a good idea, and students seem to appreciate that. To send them reminders through Blackboard or other LMS that you're using. I use also Remind for reminders. That was actually recommended by some of my previous students. But again, that's not mandatory. It's totally up to you whether you would do it or not. Again, make sure students understand the structure, that you do them. They have to prepare the chapter in advance. They have to take the quiz, explain why they have to take that quiz in advance before you practice it in class. And then you practice in class, and then the following week they have to do the homework related to that chapter. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. If you have any questions now, I will be happy to answer those. And of course, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we will go ahead and get started with some of the questions that have come in. So the first one being, for assignments with a 2-week window to complete, most students will wait until the last day or two to complete them. If they have to reply to a classmate's discussion, this is unacceptable. How do you get them to stop procrastinating without being punitive?
So regarding the homework assignments come after we have practiced the material. Even if they wait a little bit, and I noticed that most students don't wait, because we practice, for example, yesterday we practiced chapter number 4, and the homework number 4 is due next Wednesday, right? So they prefer to do that homework while they still remember what we have practiced in class. And I try to always explain. I mean, every announcement that I send in every class, I encourage them to prepare regularly and to do the things a little earlier. Of course, there are students who would always wait, but that's fine. Even if they wait, it has even some advantages if they wait, because this means that next week they will be reading whatever chapter they have to read in that week, we'll be practicing the previous chapter, and they will be doing a homework based on a chapter that we have covered 2 weeks ago. So they will have, they will kind of have to have exposure to 3 chapters in a week. So I'm not concerned if they wait for the homework assignments, but I want them to do 2 things. The first one is to take the quizzes when they are due, because otherwise it defeats the purpose of the whole structure. I want them to take those quizzes before we practice, so that just to make sure that when they come to class, they will know what we are talking about, and we can practice, and we can actually discuss things and do some more interesting activities. And if they take the quizzes on time, I'm happy with that. And they do, because they know I don't accept late ones. And regarding the homework assignments, it's totally up to them. I noticed that the most serious students would do them the day when we have practice, or the day after. Others would wait for the last minute. But again, I tell them, if I know anything happens, but just plan accordingly, because I won't accept the late assignment. I already dropped 2 of the homework assignments to account for that. So it's your responsibility now to do things on time. But again, there are advantages and disadvantages of waiting. In my case, it might even be better if they wait and have and practice 3 chapters in a week. But again, I encourage them to work earlier, because anything can happen in the last minute, and it's also a good habit to not procrastinate.
Of course. The next question that we have is, when you give low stakes quizzes that have multiple attempts, what grade counts? An average of all of these attempts, or the highest grade that they receive?
The highest. Yeah, I give them the highest. I was thinking actually about that. I was thinking whether I should count the average or the highest, but I decided this is the first experiment. Let me do it at the advantage of the students. And again, even if there is some guessing component there, I'm fine with it, because they still, I just want to make sure that they have some idea what we are talking about in class. And it helps. I mean, students participate much more this semester than they have ever participated. And I don't know whether it is part of it is probably because last semester we were kind of, when we moved online, they haven't seen so many students around, and now they are even more eager to participate, to talk, to be engaged in everything. I don't know whether that's part of it, but I think part of it is that they just feel more confident about what they know. And I feel confident even if they don't know every single thing. They know something, and it's better than nothing, better than before. And another advantage would be that they know exactly what they haven't understood, what is unclear, so they have questions ready to ask. Usually, you know, when I teach something and I ask the students, do you have any questions? And silence in the room. There are no questions, and I don't know how to interpret that. Is it because everything is clear, or is it because nothing is clear and they just don't know where to start and what to ask? In this way, they know what to ask. They have questions, and that's great, because I can see what I need to explain. I don't need to explain every single part of the chapter because they have the videos for that, but I can tell what they haven't understood and what I need to explain better or in more details in class. And we have the time to do it because we don't have to go over every single sentence in the chapter together.
We also have another good question. Is this your version of the concept of the flipped classroom, where students are expected to self-learn the material in advance, and then the classroom is more for practice and reinforcement? How do you feel that your approach is different?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. I was actually expecting a question like that, because yes, that's where the idea came from. It is something similar to the flipped classroom idea, where students are exposed to the material in advance, and then we focus on more practice in the classroom. I think the additions to that are just the structure. In week, whatever week A, you have you prepare. Then in week A plus 1, you practice, and then in week A plus 2, you have the homework assignment. So yeah, it is something similar to the flipped classroom. I think the other addition is the way it is graded, because we keep talking about the students have to be engaged, they have to prepare regularly, but also now, especially this semester and last semester, I noticed students are kind of a little bit more stressed than usual because of the whole situation. So I was looking for some way that I can still achieve that engagement, and that to encourage students to prepare and to participate in class, but at the same time to not be so stressful. And I think that kind of grading is what kind of makes this approach a little bit different. Probably 50% might sound a little too lenient for some people. So you can do 60% or 70% or something like that. You can experiment. Nobody knows what works best. But I feel like that for me that works, and students like it. They are happy with it. And if they prepare better, if they feel, if they learn more in this way, and it's not stress and they like it, I think that's I'm happy with it. So yes, to go back to your question, yes, it is a version of the flipped classroom. I think the grading component is different and kind of a little bit of the structure with both quizzes and homework assignments, one before and one after the practice.
Another question that we have is, how do they see your homework solutions? Do you post these after the due date?
Yes, I post both the homework and the answers to the homework on Blackboard. We use Blackboard. If you're using Canvas or another LMS, you can use that one. And I try to provide as detailed solutions as I can, so that students can see those. And then I encourage them, if you have any questions, please see me during office hours. I will be happy to explain whatever mistakes you have, whatever is not clear from those answers and solutions. But yes, I post them on Blackboard or whatever LMS you're using, you can post them there. And I try to post them as close to the deadline as possible, just so the students have have everything they need, all the materials as early as possible, especially if it's closer to an exam. It's good for them to have everything early. So in my case, as I mentioned, I give the due date for the homework assignments is every Wednesday, 4 p.m. And I do my best to post the answers sometime between 4 and 5 the same day.
A sort of similar question along those lines, do you post the Zoom practice sessions afterwards, and does this affect attendance in class?
So I don't tell the students that I record the Zoom sessions. I record them every time. Well, I forgot once, but in general, I record all of them, but I don't tell the students that I have the recording, and I don't post it explicitly on anywhere. But if I have a student who had some problem with technology or was sick or something, and that student specifically reaches out to me, I say, okay, that's not a problem. Just I remember this time to share the record to make a recording of this session. So I'm sharing it with you. I send that student the link. And I encourage the students again, please watch it. And if you have any questions, feel free to see me during office hours, and I'll be happy to answer your questions and to help with what I can. So I don't want to post the Zoom meetings anywhere, because I think that might affect attendance. Because I don't have points for attendance in my class. So if somebody has points for attendance, that might be different. But also this semester, I don't want to. I always encourage students to be on Zoom or to be in class. When they have an in-person session, they have to be in class. If they are sick or something, I encourage them to attend through Zoom, and they usually do. I don't have troubles with attendance. But But again, if something happens, I have the recording and I would share it with the student who needs it. But again, every time I send a recording, I tell them explicitly, but this is just once. It is always best to attend the actual meeting when you can, because you can ask questions, you can participate, you can be more engaged. It's better for understanding the material. You just have to convince them that that's best for them. And I don't know, they seem convinced. I actually have never had so many troubles with attendance. I don't know whether it's because they know that after that I test them on practice questions on I mean, they're different from the ones that we do in class, but if they can do the ones in class, they can usually do the exams well. So I change numbers, I change sometimes the goods, the services, or I change a little bit of the question. But the idea is the same, and if they can solve the problems that we have done in class, they're usually okay with exams. And I understand the benefit, and I prefer to be in class and to ask the questions. But I don't post the recordings explicitly. Only when needed, I have them.
Perfect. And we have time for one more question. How do you set up the quizzes? Do they get the same questions each time or drawn from a bank? How does the LMS deal with the 50% for the full credit scoring?
So since this is the first semester I do that, I have only one version of the quizzes. I do them through the website of the book, and then I manually transfer the grades to the LMS. If they have more or less than 50%, they have 1 or 0. It might be possible if you can do the quizzes on Blackboard or whatever LMS you're doing. Probably there is some feature there, some setting if they have more than a certain percent to have one. I do it manually this semester just because I wasn't prepared for anything else. If you're using the website of a publisher, whatever book you're using, it depends on whether that website is integrated with your LMS. So if it is integrated, the grade should go automatically. If it is not integrated, then you should just transfer the grades manually. The whatever you're using, a textbook, the website of the textbook or the LMS, multiple choice questions are graded automatically. So you will see the score, let's say 7 out of 10. And then even if you're doing the conversion manually, you just have to type 1 or 0. It doesn't take long at all. So that's I usually do it in the evenings, and it takes only a few minutes.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we're just about out of time. Thank you, Dr. Milovanska-Farrington, and thank you all for attending today. If you have any questions, you can direct them to us at marketing@hawkslearning.com, and we'll be emailing you a link to view this webinar on demand with the PowerPoint slides as well, since we did have that request. But otherwise, thanks again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.